Ça marche pas. Il est I'm being told amazing techniques in case the mic is goes off. Great. So,
Anna, I'm going to start letting people into the webinar, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome to those joining us. We'll be starting soon. I'm Hannah. I'm here in Marrakesh with my colleague Vidal from Blockchain for Supply Chain Association. Thank you for joining us. A couple more minutes and we'll be starting by sharing the agenda for today. I think everyone has had it, but just to remind us of what's there for us this afternoon for these 2 hours session. And I'll also share a few housekeeping rules for this call. We've had many people signing up, about 400. So we'll make sure that we keep the logistics going on for everyone to have a good time. And I see that the room is also filling up here in Marrakesh at the Emerging Business Factory that is hosting us for this event. This is great. A few farmers, actually. Some of them I know and I met in person a few years back. Thank you for joining us. All right, if everyone's okay, we can start now. So welcome to this event. This is the launch event for the Blockchain for Supply Chain Association North African chapter, and also colleagues from Europe have joined us for this joint event. We start with a very important theme for us in the region, addressing farmers and agriculture. We start with the theme of empowering farmers with blockchain technology. I'll go through the agenda before we start, but also some housekeeping rules for this call. So first, those rules, speakers, I promise will be on time. I know some of you have to leave at the top of the hour and so on. So I promise I'll be extra strict. And I kindly ask you for your understanding if I have to cut you a little bit or remind you of the timing. All those that are not speaking are muted outside of the Q&A sessions. Note that each session has a few minutes of question and answers allocated. And also, if you have more specific questions, all contacts will be shared after the presentation, after the webinar in the follow-up email. So you'll be able to go to deep dive with the speakers if you want. For the audience, please write your name this way, first name and then last name and country. I provided an example for myself. You can also add the company you're from or you're working with, for instance, but first name, last name, and country is very important. Again, audience, keep your questions and comments for the Q&A session. Ideally, we'll keep 3 questions for each Q&A session and open conversation for perhaps the last Q&A. You can post them on the chat as well before you speak, before you're given time to speak, and keep the questions short and precise and to the point. So that being said, let's now look at the agenda that we have for today. I'll be starting by a few words of explaining why is it that we're launching the SCA for North Africa. Then I'll hand it over to Eric Valiquet, who will explain what is BSCA and why is it that you need to join. We'll move on to my colleague Andrea, who will speak about XTC Foundation and BSCA Europe. And then my colleague Bilal, who's with me here in Marrakesh, who just landed yesterday actually, will give elements and of the blockchain, just fundamentals for us, for all of us to be on the same page. Some of us are experts, some of us are only learning and tiptoeing into the space. You're all welcome, and for sure in the Q&A session, there's no stupid question. Every question is welcome, but we're doing this little session to make sure that everyone has a foundation to participate. Then we'll move on to Chris Light and the success story of eLivestock. Very excited to have you with us, Chris. And then we'll be moving on to a cross-Mediterranean panel session using the case of olive oil traceability with our friend Soraya from Tunisia, who's actually currently in Ecuador. Thank you for joining us, Soraya. Vito and Gaetano from Euranet, and Peter, who's also currently in Tunisia from IAVTrack. After this panel session, we'll move on to discussing best practices of blockchain for sustainability in agriculture by Chris Pugno. And then environmental blockchain by Mio Rurale by Matteo Marini. And from there, we'll close the session and invite you all to our pages. So for Blockchain for Supply Chain Association North Africa and Blockchain for Supply Chain Europe. So if we're good, I'm going to start now with just a few words of why is it that we're launching Blockchain for Supply Chain Association. I think for those of you that have known me in the past few years, I'm a tech entrepreneur. I returned to Morocco in 2017 and set up a coding school, but also an inclusive tech hub called URTech. And that addresses the needs of vulnerable youth in rural communities and peri-urban communities with tech trainings and entrepreneurial skills. I've also worked with African governments to advise them on their strategy for startups and innovative ecosystems with Smart Africa. And I continue supporting innovative ecosystems in the continent as a whole. I know some of you are joining us from other countries in the continent. You're very welcome. So I came across the SCA a few months back when I was in Canada, thanks to a colleague that I had met in Kigali a few years back. And he mentioned this organization, and I got interested, not only because I love supply chain, but I think any opportunity to use technology for good and improve the lives of people, and the environment is great. So I thought, you know, given I started creating interesting relationships in this region, it would be great to also create this platform, this opportunity. So BSCA North Africa is, as of today, the first one in the association, the first chapter in the association from the African continent. The purpose for it is to stand as an example, hopefully to encourage other people from the rest of the continent to also make this platform theirs by creating perhaps other chapters. And I'll leave it to Eric to explain a little bit more of the vision and what BSCA can offer to you. Eric, I'm handing it over to you, and please feel free to take over as well the slideshow, unless you want me to go through the slides.
Thank you so very much. I will share my screen right now. An honor, a privilege, and equally excited to be participating in this first event for BSCA in North Africa. Thank you very much, Anna. We're delighted to have you on board, and the rest of the team, of course. I will try not to bore you and go through the association very quickly. Bonjour à tout le monde. Je ne vais pas faire cette session en français, mais ici au Canada, on parle et français et anglais. Ça fait plaisir. So reach out to me anytime in French or English. Be happy to. I will wager a small amount of money, a very small amount of money, that I am the coldest one on the call today, because I am calling from Canada. It is still snowy and cold, about freezing. Although one of my colleagues, Chris, or one of my friends, Chris, will be joining from out west in Canada today, so he might be colder than I am. But for the rest of the folks in North Africa, around the country, or around the continent in Africa, I'm betting that I'm the coldest of the bunch. So about the association, the Blockchain Supply Chain Association was created about 2 years ago here in Canada to bring together the supply chain industry in its understanding and its transformational needs to digitize themselves because of the pandemic, because of a few elements. So as we think of how the supply chain industry is doing business today, we are still doing business the old-fashioned way, right? We're still doing business the same way we've been doing business for hundreds of years. And that's typically, you know, the physical piece of paper that we exchange between ourselves on a daily basis. And when we think about supply chains, we exchange information between business partners in several ways. You know, between inventory needs or ordering or cash flow, we exchange information between different business partners across typically two to five business processes, right? And we still use very old-fashioned ways. Again, that piece of paper, God forbid, was still faxing, right? That word that buzzes in my ears. Even an email invoice or a PDF invoice sent by email is still very one-directional. And these are things that we need to change. I think the pandemic has shown us that. So exchanging information or having bad information is very costly. I'll oversimplify an example of this. If I'm sending you a shipment, or you're sending me a shipment across the ocean, across the skies, and I forgot to tell you, shame on me, that I've moved my warehouse to a different location, right? Be it down the street or into another state or province or even country. Those are direct costs of having bad information. And you know, from a banking perspective, anti-money laundering costs can be very expensive as well. But just the basics of bad information, chasing after information, incomplete information is very costly. Enter blockchain, right? Enter emerging technologies that will hopefully help this, and we'll run you through a bit of blockchain later on the event today. So when we think of emerging technologies, what do we mean? We mean IoT devices that will be collecting in an automated fashion, ideally without human intervention, a lot of new data, right? A lot of information from a sensor collecting temperature or location or the state of something. Some say that we'll have billions of these IoT devices collecting data in the next years to come. Where do we put this information? We put them in transactions, and that's where blockchain comes in. Blockchain is a digital ledger of transactions, if we're going to oversimplify it, right? And then we use AI to kind of manage all this information and help us make better business decisions. Is blockchain the answer for absolutely everything? No, it is not. But it is a very valuable tool in conjunction with other technologies. Some say that blockchain will revolutionize the way we do business in supply chain. I'm a big fan of that. Will it change everything? Is blockchain the solution for everything? No, it is not. But for the believers, it will change absolutely everything. If I go back to my analogy of sending pieces of paper around the world by courier or faxing, some of us are using EDI to exchange digital information. EDI was invented for the Second World War. It was made popular in the 70s and 80s, so that makes it a 70-year-old technology. I think we're due in our industry for something a bit more modern. Again, supply chains are very linear, right? If you think of your typical shipment sent across the ocean, a buyer might send a purchase order to a seller who might manufacture it, ship it overseas, or even down the streets. Sometimes governments are involved, people like customs or food inspection people. Often goes to a warehouse, a distribution center, and onto the final buyer, final parties, right? And this will involve dozens, if not hundreds, of different touch points, each with their own data silos, each with their level of risk, and each with a big lack of reconciliation and an even bigger need for reconciling information between all these data silos. In comes blockchain technology, where we share information in different ways. And I'll let my other panelists talk a bit about how blockchain works, but we think of sharing information in different ways. In this very simple example, same scenario, buyer, seller, manufacturer, carrier, regulatory, but each has visibility to a common ledger at the same time. Does that mean we have to share all our industry secrets to each other? Absolutely not. You share what you need to share with the parties that need it. But again, it is there on the ledger for people to react. At the association, we are here to help you understand all this. Our mission is to help you transform your supply chain using blockchain technology. It's part of the digitization efforts. It's part of modernizing our supply chains. We can do much better as an industry. What we do at the association, we do advocacy work. So we talk with our governments, we listen to their priorities, and we are the voice of our members to those governing bodies, like the governments, like customs, and others as well. Who impacts the supply chain, right? You have standards organizations, you have people like GS1. So we listen to these parties, and we help shape policy. As an example, we are members of ISO, and we participate in the development of standards. We did the same here in Canada through the Standard Council of Canada. So we help shape policy, we help understand standards, and we shape those standards as well. Collaboration, of course, it's all about the network, it's all about the community. We help each other out. If you need a blockchain expert, we have those. If you need a supply chain expert, we have those as well. It's all about working together. And of course, education through webinars and workshops, events like this, to help you understand what blockchain is and how it can transform your supply chain. We even are kicking off a new course we started yesterday for blockchain in the logistics world here in Canada, and it's going to be made available around the world. How does our ecosystem look like, or what does it look like? Again, we mentioned these governing bodies, so governments and standards, industry, of course, right? Agriculture, food, pharma, aerospace, retail, mining, you name it, the people who actually do stuff, right? The farmers, you do stuff, you feed the world. That's very important to have you within the ecosystem. Other associations and other universities, so academics, very important to keep us on the right path. The logistics world, of course. People who move the money around, very important. You might as well do stuff, but if you don't get paid for it, what's the point, right? And of course, technology, blockchain, IoT, AI, edge computing, you name it, that is all part of our ecosystem. We started our life in 2019 here in Canada. Again, it is still cold. We are growing, and thank you to Hannah for kicking off this North Africa chapter. We also have chapters in South America, in Europe, of course, the USA, India, Australia, and New Zealand, and we are growing. If you're interested in starting a chapter, reach out to us anytime. And again, thank you very much for your time today. I hope I stayed on track, Hannah.
Yes, very
excellent.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. So perhaps just to allow for everyone to ask questions, we have 5 minutes Q&A before we move on to Andrea. Eric, you mentioned education courses. Can you speak about what you're preparing now? I know you have a course that you've launched and that will be maybe soon available to this region and also to Europe.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking. So here in Canada, we have an association called CITT, who is a very well-known 100-year-old institution that helps logistics professionals stay current, learn new tricks, learn new trades, and continuously evolve. So we've partnered with CITT to bring a blockchain for logistics course that teaches you the basics of blockchain, of course, but very specifically targets the logistics and supply chain world. We're not here to talk about cryptocurrencies. We're not here to talk about pictures of monkeys that gather millions of dollars as an NFT. That's not our thing. Our thing is about supply chain, enterprise-grade solutions. How can we improve supply chain? And people need information. People want to understand. And this course is part of that.
Thank you so much, Eric. The other thing is that you mentioned advocacy, and I'm very keen on doing work with African governments. As a matter of fact, I think the first time we spoke, I told you I have a mapping of where countries stand in terms of their legislation towards blockchain, and a lot of them simply avoid this conversation or keep a strict positioning. So perhaps for those of you that are joining us, feel free to get involved. I think we are co-creating the policies for innovation. So I see here an opportunity for us to do work in this region. Yeah, I'll check if we have questions in the chat. And if not, I'll hand it over to Andrea for a few words.
So I believe we don't have any questions. And feel free to use the Q&A button as well, right? Absolutely. So in terms of adoption of blockchain among rural communities, what are the policy issues? A very good question. And that's a big answer, right? It kind of depends. It depends on your countries. From the use of blockchain, again, apart from cryptocurrency, there are no real regulations, right? It's a technology. It's like using the internet. I don't think any country, well, I say that quickly in today's geopolitical situations, but in most countries, you are allowed to use the internet to do business, right? And blockchain is just part of that. From a regulatory perspective, when it comes to financing, that's sometimes another question, but there are no real regulatory barriers to using blockchain technology. It's just another technology like the internet.
Yes, I second that. I think mostly from what I've understood in doing this mapping a few years back, actually, was the avoidance of positioning from countries. But something to point at, I used to work for Smart Africa, and Smart Africa has a blueprint to speak about the best practices on blockchain. So for those of you that are interested, you can look at the Smart Africa website. And of course, all those resources will make available as well to the community. Most likely we'll start a crowdsourced effort to update this document that I've started a few years back. So if there's no further question, thank you very much, Eric. I'll pass it on to Andrea. Andrea, over to you. You have, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Anaya, for handing these over to me. Delighted to be here and to make acquaintances with you all. Just a quick presentation from myself. You see, I'm also associated with the RIC and with the HANAI. I'm in charge of taking care of the Europe chapter. Just a few words about myself. I'm a long-term trade finance specialist practitioner, I'd say so. So I come from a very traditional world, not in banks actually, but in multinational companies. And namely in the agri-food sector. I spent most of my career working with Northern Africa, Middle East, the whole continent. So being born, let's say professionally, from a professional point of view in trade finance, one can notice how traditional in its core is the industry. It was created actually here, where I'm living, a very long time ago, and in its core, the industry never really evolved. So I agree with that. What Eric was saying in terms of documents handling, what we're nowadays doing is some kind of a big challenge in pushing this new technology, which is peer-to-peer. And it's an evolution actually that is spurring a revolution in terms of economic and ergonomics. It's a very efficient technology that allows peer-to-peer. That's where the good point comes, you see, not only for Africa, but also for Europe, for the entire world. We are hearing, talking about small, medium, and micro enterprises enablement, empowerment. So we now have, from a financial point of view, also not only from an operational one, a technology that allows, that will allow actually companies, small companies, very small one, to act, cutting out the huge number of intermediaries. So if I have to think of something sustainable, empowering, that's really blockchain. We see the rise of so many solutions in trade funds, supply chain funds. Again, just another few words about my profile. I'm the current chair of the Hyperledger Trade Fund SIG. That's where Eric and I got acquainted. And besides this, I'm also a business developer for the XDC Foundation and XDC Network, which is the blockchain network that XDC Foundation is running. It's a hybrid blockchain protocol, which means it has double state, both public, such as you see the ones that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and stuff like this. And it also has a private state, which allows for transaction to be, let's say, privately, keeping, you see, the level of security much higher. So what we are doing nowadays within the XDC Foundation and XDC Network is pointing out massively in what we are discussing today in this meeting, which is sustainability in the end, and inclusion and financial inclusion to start from African continent. That's where the success is. That's where the real challenge is in the future. With lots of opportunity, lots of challenges, but we are managing to start serious projects within the continent, not only Northern Africa, but also central part of Africa, Western Africa, and Eastern Africa. I see a very bright future, both with the XDC Foundation and in general for blockchain in the African continent. not only in agriculture, food production, but in general. I'm also referring to also financial aspects and other all around. See, there's a lot more.
Andrea, thank you for these few words. So for those of you that are interested in going deeper, again, we'll be sharing the contacts of all speakers. I'll now invite my other colleague Bilal to take over. Bilal, we have 10 minutes to go through the foundations of blockchain and make sure that everyone is on the same page.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
We're good.
Okay, hello. I'm Bilal Brahim. I've been a philosophy.
Bilal, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you anymore. Or Hannah, you're on mute either way.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but we're getting the feedback loop.
Is it good now?
Still feedback loop. Suggest you put yourself on mute and Hannah, take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, put yourself on mute now, Bilal. Hannah, take yourself off mute. Sorry, folks, won't be long. Live events are always cool. Can't hear you, Bilal.
Can you hear me?
Perhaps the best thing is to have Bilal. Okay, so then perhaps we'll pass it on. No, Bilal, I think we absolutely need to have the fundamentals before Chris. So you can share the screen here. Okay.
Hello? Hello? Vous pouvez couper les baffes? Voilà. Est-ce que ça va mieux comme ça?
Beaucoup mieux, merci.
Eric, est-ce que tu m'entends?
Yes, parfait.
Eric, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, on t'entend très bien.
Ok. Donc, bonjour, désolé, on a eu quelques problèmes techniques parce qu'on essayait de garder le micro pour les auditeurs ici. Donc, je me présente rapidement, professeur de philosophie pendant 14 ans. Ce qui m'a intéressé dans la sorry, in English. Yeah, sorry, I was a philosophy teacher for 14 years, and my goal was to try to have an impact using blockchain technology, not just for cryptocurrency, as Andrea and Eric said, but using the blockchain technology. And that's something that it's not easy to really understand how impactful it can be. So maybe I can just present you what are the challenges and what is blockchain. Let me share my screen. Hopefully it works. So if you can see my screen here, basically blockchain is a ledger that is shared around the world globally. So it looks like something like that. This is the live Bitcoin blockchain working and transacting. So you have different miners trying to save transactions. The key problem here is to have the maximum number of transactions per second so anybody can use it as fast as possible. And as you see on Bitcoin here, you have this beautiful website that shows let me just stop. Okay, you have this website that shows the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin network here, you have the number of transactions represented by people. And you have the Ethereum blockchain here, every transaction is represented by people. The problem is those blockchains are congested. Too many transactions, very expensive. You have to pay between $30 to $50 to have a transaction go on board on the blockchain. This is the Ethereum one, transaction, block by block. Each block is represented here by a bus. And the Bitcoin one, which is even slower. So the goal in the whole blockchain industry, especially for supply chain, is to have a fast blockchain that everybody can use, and also a cheap blockchain. So more transactions, easier transactions that you can really be impactful. Because if you have a supply chain running on Ethereum or Bitcoin, you will have to pay a lot, and that will be very slow. So you won't have the live updates from your product traveling the world. So that's why we have, like Andrea presented, XDC or Algorand, where you have different level of performance. You have a much higher level of performance, and the whole goal is to have more transaction per second. So in this picture, you have just the number of transaction per seconds. Bitcoin is very slow, so it's very difficult to really use it as a financial tool for businesses. Ethereum is better, but still very slow. Visa, when you use your card, your plastic bank money, you have 24,000 transactions per second globally, and it works, but sometimes we have to wait. And new blockchains like Algorand or XDC can have a way higher throughput. And that's why when having my project for farmers to help them sell their products, it's basically a marketplace for farmers to connect them directly to the consumers. I need to select the right blockchain. And for me, it was obvious that I had to choose something like Algorand that is fast and cheap, because if the farmer has to pay $50 to send a transaction, to pay or to be paid, that doesn't make the business, especially in Africa, valuable. It cannot work. So we need to find a cheap, fast blockchain to work on. So that's what Fame is all about. Fame is basically a social app for farmers to make the farmers known by the consumers, because we usually eat something, we don't even know where it comes from. So when you have a social app where you can talk to your farmer and chat with him, he can post his product on the social app, you can immediately chat with him, and you can buy immediately from him, and the payment is within the app. So you don't need to have to go through all the bank, the cash, go to the ATM, ask your bank. So to facilitate transactions, you make it live, peer-to-peer, and direct from the farmer to the consumer. And that's what I've been working for the last few months. So it's a marketplace, and we can add other features in the future. NFT, a DAO. I can maybe another time talk more about what is a DAO. And we can also add financial tools for farmers so they can have access to microcredit. So literally, to summarize, to not take too much of the time, because we lost a lot of time on the tech problem. So basically, the app is like this. What I want is for a real farm, the screen is not very visible for you, I'm sorry. But my goal is to have a better product at the farm, so they can post and sell better product on the marketplace, on the app, to have a better income and to increase their savings. So my goal is to provide them a marketplace where they can easily post new products, get paid on the app without leaving the app, just as fast as possible, and to have their saving increased by earning a passive income. So within the app, what we are doing is we are included what we call DeFi, decentralized finance, within the app. So anybody can use the app, not even if they're not farmers, they can just use the app to trade, to lend, to borrow. And the whole goal of that is to try to bring microcredit to farmers. Staking, they can swap and trade. And by being liquidity provider, providing liquidity for the DEX, the decentralized exchange, they can earn a passive income. So to summarize, to not take too much of the time again, what I'm trying to do, what we are live actually now on the beta net, so like we are, on testnet. So it's not with real money for now. We are live on Google Play for Android phones. You just download the app, you post your product, you can sell, and we will provide the DeFi tools. We already started. So any farmer can earn a passive income. And in the long term, we are trying to work for the supply chain solutions. So the farmer can not only sell locally, but also globally. But that's very difficult because you have to include all the distributors in the supply chain. And my whole goal is to make the farmer known as the producer of the food to make it better for the consumer and obviously for the farmer, especially if he can have a passive income to reinvest in his farm.
Thank you very much, Fidel, and thank you for everyone for bearing with us. These technical difficulties do happen indeed when you're doing a webinar with so many countries involved, and the first time in collaboration. We're going to move on to
Lost your video, your audio.
You're muted.
Hannah, we can't hear you anymore.
Still muted.
with the time.
There you go.
So over to you, Chris. Over to you. Let me know if you want me to go through the slides or if you want to share your screen directly. You should have this possibility to share your screen.
I'm going to try sharing. Let's see how we go. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
There we go.
Hi, I'm bonjour tout le monde. Je vais parler en anglais. It's really great to be here. My name is Chris Light. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I have a startup, eLivestock Global. It's always good to hear about associations and to be part of that. And one of the things we look for, being a local company everywhere, we want to be a local company everywhere. So we look for associations leading to workforce and training and so on. So about the company, we were founded in 2019, and we're, as I said, we're based in Washington, D.C. We're a venture capital funded social enterprise. And our goal is to, we're basically a healthy livestock company. So our goal is to improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers through traceability. So our official launch was June of last year. So, and we won best blockchain solution in Africa from Digital Banker within our first 6 months of launch, which was we're here for smallholder farmers, but it was a nice surprise. So we don't, it's never good to show, or some people get uncomfortable when you show real animals. So we have a mascot, Elvis, who is how we do our demonstrations, and he's becoming quite famous. We didn't anticipate that he would take off on social media, but you know, we don't know where that'll go. But it's a great way of demonstrating our product. So why did we start? And people say, well, wait, you're in Washington. Why? And why Zimbabwe? Well, we thought Zimbabwe could use some good news, and they also had a humanitarian need. They had an outbreak of tick-borne disease, which led to, it's actually more than 50,000. 50,000 is the official number. So we were able to bring in our system and start dealing with that health issue. And it's also a stepping stone towards allowing them to export again. So this is an overview. We think that blockchain is very good for supply chains. There's a magazine called RFID Journal who's written an article on our solution. It's that cutting edge. We used a smarter tag, an RFID scanner, and then our app. And then the other thing that's important is that our system can work from up to 15 meters away, so it can do things like inventory count and tracking, and you don't have to get as close to the animals. has led to us having discussions with other groups in Africa, as there are certain, which you'll have to stay tuned on, but there are other animals that people don't want to get too close to, so they like that our system has a good range. This is the dashboard for our system. So I'm going to show a case study on collateralization, but one of the things that financial institutions like is they can track animals that are in our system and do it remotely. They can do it from their mobile phone. They can do it from their desktop. We have it segregated. There's information that the farmer, smallholder, commercial can see. We're also a health system, so we let veterinarians have access to what's a simple healthcare record, and then we do aggregate data sanitized for the government ministry. I know for relevant government ministry, I know that a lot of people are concerned about data protection and see data as the new gold, and we have that very much in mind. So then why would we? Collateralization of, we see this as $1 trillion opportunity. There's 250 million cows in Africa, and that's just cows. Our system also does sheep and goats and pigs. Farmers aren't able to access, particularly smallholder, are not able to access credit. So we developed a smart contract-based solution that basically allows collateralization of the animals, and I'll run through a very brief smart contract. I think many of you know what a smart contract is, so I'm not gonna. It's just a simple computer program. It's an electronic version of a contract, and then the way this would work, for say a 12-month contract for a cow, is there'd be insurance. There'd be a lien placed against the animal, and then there would be disbursement of funds. And then there would be 12 payments. And then at the end of the smart contract, if all the terms have been met, they would close the lien against the animal and end the insurance. So it's very simple, very straightforward. And we're going to be rolling this out in a number of different markets. So one of the things we discovered is that a lot of people are still unbanked. Actually, 90% of I was reading this yesterday, 90% of transactions in Africa are still cash-based. So we want to do digital inclusion, but we also want to do financial inclusion. So we've come up with a very simple digital wallet that allows people to do. A lot of our payments are micro. We're talking about collecting 10 cents for a simple dipping treatment. So a lot of times when you do that, you might collect more than, it might cost you more in transaction fees historically than you would collect. So we've come up with a very simple solution that handles that, and it's customizable for the market. Obviously, the impact: better incomes, better healthcare. Governments love hard currency. We're talking to a lot of governments about exporting, and then of course, reduction in cattle mortality, and we're looking at some of the carbon and methane aspects. So that's going to be which falls in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. So people question, do they want to trust us with their data? Well, we're partnered with MasterCard, so many people already trust MasterCard with their data. So we find that helps to overcome that obstacle. And then the other thing is our solution does look at the smallholder farmer. Most solutions are just supply chain based, so we find that's another advantage we have. I'm actually a technologist, I should say. Everyone else on the team pretty much is a cattle farmer. So we designed a solution for the farmer by the farmer. So we find that also is useful. And then we also keep a very minimal, low cost of entry price point. So as I said, we won best blockchain solution in Africa, Digital Banker. Which was a surprise. People have said a lot of nice things about us, which is great. The next slide is just some of the places we've been covered. If you do a Google search on us with livestock and blockchain, we tend to be top of the search results, which has been a tremendous positive impact for Zimbabwe. So, and then people ask, how does it start? There's this whole sequence, how it started, how it's going. So at the top, we have Elvis. And then at the bottom, we have Elvis with his larger herd. So our solution is growing. So that's my little my short overview presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Fantastic presentation, and thank you for the attention for keeping it super sensitive when it comes to displaying images of animals. This is much appreciated on my end too. Any question from the audience? Chris will be able to stay with us for the next 5 minutes, but I know he has to leave after that. So please, please share your questions. You can put them on the chat, and then we can also give you the opportunity to unmute yourself. I see some of the attendees are also connecting from East Africa, so I think this is particularly relevant given the project is Zimbabwe based. Yes, you wanna take one of the mics? Oh, yeah. If you want him to see you, you can come.
Thank you for your presentation and for the information. I have a quick question. For example, in Morocco, we have our own national system for tracking and identifying catches. Does your system plug into any existing national system, or it has to actually use its own proprietary identification tags?
Yeah, we want to be inclusive. So our system is pretty much, you could almost think about it as a platform for livestock. So we want to work with one of the things we're sensitive to is people and governments have invested in existing systems, and we want them to be able to use our system, particularly as we roll out solutions like a trading marketplace. That's one of the things we're piloting right now, where say a buyer in Saudi Arabia is able to review and purchase an animal without needing to they can buy from Zimbabwe without needing to travel to Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much. So you can plug into any national system. That's perfect.
Please contact me and we'll discuss further. Yeah, that's our plan. Yeah, we don't want to. Our system can scale to, we have unlimited scale because we're with MasterCard and we're on Amazon Cloud, but we certainly want to work with existing systems. So.
Yeah, we have a very strong agri-tech startup here asking you the question. So I think the collaboration might emerge from this conversation. Another question from the attendees. I see Mokwa has raised his or her hand. I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not seeing a picture. Please unmute yourself and ask your question directly to Chris, and then we'll leave Chris to his other meeting.
So we have Mokua raising his hand.
Yes, exactly. Mokua, can you unmute yourself, or do you need us to unmute you? Maybe Eric can help with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go, Mokua. You can ask your question now. You can unmute yourself, Mokua.
You can hear me now?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And it's a privilege to have this chance to speak from Kenya, East Africa. And you get that what Chris has highlighted there is some of the challenges that farmers, livestock farmers are facing in East Africa. And generally, let me speak from my country. And you get that, let's talk about Maasais. They are, I can say that they are good livestock keepers and part of northeastern Kenya. And you get that we have some tribes which are Turkanas, Maasais, and Boranas. They do keep livestock, and due to climate change, currently you get that many farmers do lose a lot of livestock due to drought, which leads to lack of feed and water. And you get that I wanted to ask Chris, what are the plans and objective of extending from Zimbabwe to this region, because you get that the same challenge here, I think in Zimbabwe, is manageable compared to Kenya. Apart from that, you get that pest and diseases also is the challenge. And major thing that the farmers lacking here or generally talk about Africa, you get that they lack information, they lack assistance, they lack funds. And I see that you have outlined that. What are the plans and the roadmap on extending this one or scaling it up from South Central Africa to Eastern region of Africa and the Horn of Africa in large?
Of the 250 million cattle or live cattle in Africa, I think there's like 100 million plus in the Horn of Africa, and we're having discussions right now with Kenya, with the government, with some of the donor community. I lived in Kenya for 5 years growing up, so I will tell you that personally, it's very close to my heart. So maybe you can drop me an email, and then we can discuss further. But I'll certainly keep you informed. Actually, this morning I booked a meeting for next Wednesday with someone in Kenya. So Kenya's.
Okay, welcome to Kenya.
Asante sana.
Karibu.
Can't hear you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your time, for this insightful presentation. All the best for scaling up the solution in East Africa and further. Obviously, there's a strong interest also here in Morocco. We'll move on to the panel, and I see more hands raised. Please ask your questions on the chat. Like I said at the beginning, I'm trying to stick to the time because I know some of the panelists need to go at specific times. So we'll move on to the panel and the case study of olive oil traceability with amazing panelists. Soraya Hosni, founder of Clever Harvest, currently joining from Ecuador. Vito and Gaetano from Euranet, joining from Italy. And Peter Johnson from Ayadetrek, joining from Tunisia. Welcome to the floor. Very happy to have you with me. I'll ask you perhaps in this order to introduce yourself briefly. And I know we have a few slides also from Euranet, so I'll pull them sharing my screen in the meantime. So please, Soraya, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Chris and Andrea. I really appreciate being here with you today. So I'm Soraya Hosni. I'm a founder of Clever Harvest. We're a tech company that provides tools for farmers to optimize their production and enable traceability and access to market. And we currently work in the olive oil supply chain in Tunisia, Spain, and California, as well as extending to the coffee industry in Ecuador, which is where I'm at, and Kenya, which is where Mokwa is at, and also the Philippines. So thank you, everybody, and excited about this conversation.
Thank you for being with us. Vito and Gaetano, the floor is yours to introduce yourself briefly and Euranet.
Yes, of course. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Vito Cristanini, the managing partner of Euranet, a consultant company specializing in implementing organizational standards like quality, business continuity, security, data protection, circular economy, and sustainability. Our most relevant clients are working in manufacturing, logistics, fashion and luxury, automotive, food and beverage, finance, and ICT. Please, Gaetano. Gaetano, if you want to introduce yourself.
Gaetano, I believe you're still on mute, sir.
Good morning, everybody. I am Gaetano Bonessia. I technical manager of the supply chain of Italia Olivicola. Italia Olivicola is an organization of the farmer olive oil, and also 230,000 farmers. And we have an application of blockchain for the traceability of supply chain olive oil. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaetano. And I'm inviting now Peter Johnson from Ayadetrek, currently speaking from Tunisia. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my background before coming into the tech space was working in international development and also in diplomacy, having been at the African Development Bank and then at the US Department of State. And in parallel, we're doing a lot of consulting work still for the European Commission, as well as for UN agencies like the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And we've really been looking at the focus of trying to make our blockchain-based tools as simple as possible, with the idea that something that was maybe scaring or pushing some farmers away from using these tools at the beginning was difficulty of use or slow speeds or high transaction costs. And so that's where our target has been really, how can we make this as simple as possible for that farm worker who maybe has, in some cases, only basic literacy skills to use this system, to be able to input data and to share data. And so we've been doing also a lot of work in East Africa and Central America and West Africa, a little bit in India as well, and looking at how we can make as simple of traceability systems as possible. Again, this is something where we look at in coordination with speaking to folks at the different international development agencies as well, of how we can coordinate with them. And also been teaching in this space in general. I teach entrepreneurship here in Tunisia, and my students hear me talk far too much, maybe more than they want to, about blockchain.
Fantastic. Well, very happy to have you on this panel. I know the team from Euronet has prepared some slides, but I actually will invite you to answer questions first, and perhaps the team from Euronet can also pull the slides whenever relevant. I want to start the conversation going, and I will start by asking you the following. To each panelist, what would be your pitch to promote the use of blockchain in agricultural value chains, perhaps using the example of olive oil or any other example relevant to you? And I'll ask Soraya first. I think you need to be unmuted. Yeah.
You know, the farmers produce amazing olive oil and produce amazing crop in general, but the supply chain is broken. And currently the products of high quality, they get diluted in the supply chain and on the market, and the consumers don't have access to it. And there's too many people and middlemen on this road from the farmer to the consumer. So I really believe that blockchain can enable simple transactions, transparency, and facilitate the communication between the farmers and the consumers. And at the end of the day, you know, olive oil is an example of how broken the olive oil supply chain is, because you can't even find bottles of olive oil on the shelves on the global market from the major producing countries, and that is because the lack of transparency. So I do believe that accountability together with blockchain can help solve this global problem.
Thank you, Soraya, for this pitch. Peter? Peter, over to you. What would be your pitch to promote the use of blockchain in this space?
Again, the transparency issue is the big thing. We don't know if there's something that's a counterfeit, for example. Like, of course, certain products have built up a strong brand and people know that, say, olive oil from a certain place is high quality, and someone may just simply try to repackage an old bottle with a lower quality product. And that dilutes the brand and it dilutes the income for everyone along the supply chain. If we can have simple products like that were described earlier by Fame, where you know the full supply chain, where you know who your producer is, you can be in contact with the farmer. This is something where that farm to fork relationship becomes really personal. And we can also make sure the farmers capture that true part of the value that they deserve. Again, so many supply chains, it's the producers, the mills, the middlemen, not the producers, but the processors, meant to say, or the middlemen who are capturing most of the value. And we want to make sure the farmers get a bigger part of this value in the future.
Thank you, Peter. So more transparency, more accountability, fairer prices, closer to the market. What will be your pitch, Gaetano and Vito from Euronet, to promote the use of blockchain in agricultural value chains?
Yes, thank you, Soraya. I would briefly describe our project in traceability for olive and oil. And briefly, for our company, the traceability from the olive inbound to oil outbound phase is a project of great professional interest and satisfaction, let me say. Because in defining the scope of work and perimeter of application, the team that was involved was aware of carrying out a complex and articulate work that would positively affect the community well-being. So for this reason, it is in the initial phase was not we are not starting with designing the blockchain solution, but to build a declared project, a dedicated project team. The project team that necessary have the competences about ICT, life cycle of the production chain and company organization. And at the same time, each individual had to have characteristics oriented to innovation, creativity, efficient communication, and propensity to change. This is a very important characteristic because introducing this new technology is not so easy. And we have first of all analyzed the potential risk of this project. And first of all, the project managers identified the use of specialistic terminology, not commonly used and understood, as a relevant risk. Consequently, it was organized a roundtable meeting to present and share the dictionary of terminology in the various disciplines. To this activity was followed the presentation of macro phases in which the project would be articulated, explaining as each of the interested parties would receive the support of the members of the project team to arrive to attain the expected deliveries. So to this phase, alignment was side by side, the description of what could have been possible to obtain with blockchain and what could not have. So Gaetano, if you wanted to introduce how this activity was implemented in your company.
Yes, thanks, Vito. In the project blockchain in supply chain traceability in Italia Olivicola is very, very important because the objective of the project is the increase the value of the product olive oil extra virgin. Another objective, transparency of all operation. When the data is being uploaded, it cannot delete it. Reduce the cost of inspection because the audit is very, very expensive. Speed up click-prof, the extraction of an oil's history, origin, and supply file. And all this was possible thanks to the technical collaboration of a specialized working group that always the meeting of our request, economic and social part, with the world of information technology, through the implementation of a management software, the interface with the blockchain. The software takes the production data from the sea unloading and unloading register national cogent in Italy. Then data validated by the public authority, to which the file production data are added. For example, book file, cultivation operation, phytosanitary treatments, and the date of transformation of olives into oil, such as chemical, physical, and organoleptic analyses. This is very, very important, and more data for analyzing blockchain. For example, reduce the water for irrigation, the humidity, very, 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 very strong. We strongly believe in this project to once again guarantee the consumer on the origin and on all the work put in place, but the olive grows. In the near future, we have decided to implement a unique management software at the national level to have a single communication language between the different computer programs and minimize the percentage of errors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you both. Thank you for this detailed pitch. I'll move on to my next questions. I have 3 more questions before I open the floor to more questions from the audience. And I'll kindly ask you to stick to 2 minutes so we make sure that we have an even distribution of the time. As you know, this is a joint event between Europe and North Africa, so I'm very keen on making sure that there's enough participation on this side of the Mediterranean as well. And more specifically also because Soraya happens to be also the only female in this panel. My hope is that in future events we'll have more women represented. So my next question is the following. What are the challenges to the adoption of blockchain in agriculture around the Mediterranean? And I'll start with Peter. Peter, you have 2 minutes to tell me and tell us about the challenges that you perceive. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, the biggest challenge is just people being knowledgeable about it, people realizing what this can do. I feel people are very scared. They hear the word blockchain, they instantly think of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. They think about the legal and regulatory issues we talked about before. Of can we use this? Yes, of course, as explained before, it's about supply chains, not about currency in this case. But getting people to have that basic understanding, making the use case simple enough that people really just get it and it's easy for them to use. Again, our tool, we just made a tool that's got 4 buttons on the app. So it's super easy to enter data and the consumer can just scan a QR code on a package and see the whole history of the product. And I think others also have made simple, easy to use tools. And that's really, I think, one of the key things, making this so simple that it's like the apps on our cell phones. We don't know how the apps work. We don't have to know how to program, how to make an app. We just know they function. We don't need to know the internal workings. And when blockchain is at the same level, that it's that easy to use and that fast, I think that's where mainstream adoption happens. And it becomes an easy, simple thing that people know that they can trust this data, they can trust the encryption, the security of it, but they don't have to be concerned about it being something difficult to use or have even how people right now may have barriers creating a MetaMask wallet or other types of wallets. That just becomes an easy to use thing that it's so easy you don't think about the details.
Thank you. So this is a main message for the practitioners and the experts in the room, those that are designing blockchain products, to make it more easy and simple to encourage mainstream use. Soraya, what do you see are the challenges in the adoption of blockchain in agriculture around the Mediterranean?
So, you know, I'm going to start from the case of Tunisia. First of all, Tunisia is the pioneer in using blockchain in the olive oil industry, the very first company in the world that have used blockchain technology in the olive oil industry is a Tunisian company. It's a CHO. And since then, because they're a pioneer, because they do really good work, everyone else in Tunisia wants to use blockchain. So the convincing exporters, isn't really part of the equation. People want to use tools. Now, tools that are relevant is very important and easy to use, like Peter said. And we kind of did a hybrid model with Clever Harvest this harvest and tested a system that we implemented ourselves, which puts agri-tracers at the mills that enter the data for the millers and for the farmers. In this case, we made the technology accessible for the people on the ground, but we took care of entering the data. And we did that by hiring young people from the agricultural industry that are in rural areas. And so we had a social impact, generational impact, and we enabled the technology to be used. The challenge, though, that I see for us from Tunisia specifically is that, you know, importing countries, specifically European countries, do not have those tools in place. And transparency is what we want as a nation and what most producing countries want to implement, because they're the ones suffering from it. When the product leaves Tunisia, we almost have nothing to hide. It's after that things get a little shady. And so how can we ensure that technology is used throughout the whole value chain, not just from the producing country or from the producers? And even if we use technology that is simple to use or that the data is logged, how can we ensure that the tool will continue to be used throughout the chain of the life of the product is kind of the major challenge. You know, so that speaks to uniformity of practices of trade. When Spain imposed traceability, they did so only for European product. So, you know, uniformity of practice of trade, cost of blockchain. So currently the tools that are available and kind of the most comprehensive one on a global scale, like Bilal said, are very costly in terms of price and also on transfer of data. And voila. Another challenge is maybe collaborations between initiatives that are emerging from all over the Mediterranean, and making sure that there is uniformity in what the tools that are being developed, so that we don't have a system that works in this country and not in this country, etc., etc.
Thank you, Soraya. So indeed, cost standards and the hope, I think, in what I can express here from Morocco is that, as a matter of fact, Tunisia, again, being a model, can inspire other countries and other actors in the region to move further into this space. Gaetano, Vito, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, let me briefly describe what we have seen in implementing a blockchain solution. Because working on with these new tools, with these new technologies, for us it's very important to respect, focalize the attention of 5 most important pillars, starting from the data security. So when farmers use the data in the blockchain, the data needs to be protected, and so the adoption of cybersecurity standard was of fundamental importance. So talking about the usability, using the object modeling process is another important step. And to simplify the life of the worker with the blockchain is essential to facilitate the data introducing. So in the project of Italia Olivicola, we have choose to not implement the IoT solution, but to acquire directly the data from the database and available information from the database of Italia Olivicola. And our intention is to reduce the cost, obviously, reduce the cost for checking, for insert the data, for control the possibility of wrong information inside before to insert the block in the blockchain. So this is very important. And we think about the global cost of this operation that could respect the sustainability for all players. Gaetano, what do you think in particular? Because we are thinking in terms of return of investment, because if we are investing in the blockchain project, we need to think in terms of return of investment.
Yeah. Gaetano, perhaps you have additional thoughts. If not, I'll actually invite also other speakers, because I want to make sure that everyone has a clear idea of what it is that you're doing. I know Euranet has explained a little bit of their model, and they shared slides that will be also on the deck, that will be sent to all participants, and perhaps we can also go over it once again briefly. I just want to make sure, that you're given the opportunity to pitch what it is that you do. I know you pitched for the use of blockchain in agricultural value chains, but perhaps we can have you in a minute say what it is, what are the products that you're working on now. So 1 minute, as if we were kind of like a startup panel. And I'll start with you, Peter, once again. Please talk to us about iAddedTrack.
All right, fantastic. Well, iAddedTrack was our initial tool that was built on the Stellar blockchain. So it's fast, it's light, it's energy efficient, and it's a system where it's phone-based, where you could use a simple, the cheapest smartphone you could find. You can use this, enter data. There's just 4 buttons on the screen. When you make an entry, you're already logged in, so your date, time, location are already added and recorded, and that data goes into the blockchain. If you're offline, it's stored locally on your phone, but your location will be stored. So when you do connect to the internet, information will go up onto the blockchain. We make it where it's fractions of a penny for each entry to be going in, so it's really low cost as well to enter the data. But again, you can easily have something where that QR code that's put in the final packaging can trace it back to the whole history of the product. Next, we're working on some new tools using NFTs and using DAOs as a governance system, but that goes into a lot more detail than 1 minute if I explain those ones. But those are our next stages we're looking at.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for sticking to the 1 minute. If you can also put on the chat the links perhaps where people can learn more about what you do, as well as your LinkedIn profile for them to follow you. I'll hand it over to Soraya to pitch about Clever Harvest.
Can I share an image?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. You have rights to share your screen, I think, at this point.
There you go. So, Clever Harvest started as a blockchain idea, but really what we ended up doing is providing tools for coordination. So we don't just trace the geolocalization of the crop or where the production was made. We track how it was produced. So we're interested in the process more than in the place. And this had brought a lot of value to the producers because it enabled increase of quality and quality control and also mill management. So we ended up providing 3 tools instead of just 1 tool, which was the original idea of tracing. We provide the traceability app, the mill management, because once we trace all the process, we enable a dashboard for the miller to have control over their real-time inventory and where their crop is located in real time, so they can manage it at a distance, and then put all of that on the marketplace. So that's basically the general comprehensive approach of Clever Harvest. And we started with olive oil, but now we're in the coffee industry.
Fantastic, and we wish you to embrace and go into many more industries. Euranet, I know you've shared your pitch kind of already, but if you want to kind of clarify and also use the slides that you shared with me, I said to everyone that it will be on the deck that will be sent. You have 1 minute, and I'll move on to my next 2 questions and then open the floor for more questions from the audience. Over to you, Vito and Gaetano.
Yes, if you want to share the slide 1.
Gaetano, do you want to share the slides? I can also share the screen if you want.
Okay, or I can share with you my screen.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Okay, this is the scheme that we have used to implement the blockchain project. And so you can easily find, identify the most relevant step of a general, but specific in the same time, life project cycle. So the first, the most important points, let me say, is the first 2 steps. The assessment and the design, because in this step that we are defining exactly the scope of the work, the perimeter, the characteristic, how and where the data are stored, and what is the meaning of the project. So in these steps, all the companies involved, and the managing directors, managers, or functional managers are involved to explain the scope, what they want to do, and let me say the last part of the project, the communication is also important because it is necessary in this type of blockchain maturity in the agricultural field to better communicate how to recognize the value added, the value of this project. Why this is so important to have the traceability of the information. Why it is so important to have a data that is validated and visible all the time.
Thank you, Vito. I have a few more questions, but actually I want to perhaps give an opportunity to the audience to ask their questions. I know, Peter, you need to go in a few minutes. So let me check maybe the questions that we have on the chat. And Eric, if you can help me with that, actually, because we're displaying from my computer, so I'm not seeing everything. If you have a question for one of our speakers today, I know it's a lot of information and it's a lot of content, but it also shows that there's a lot of activities in the space on both sides of the Mediterranean, so this is fantastic. Yes, so Peter, I see that you have to leave. Thank you for being with us. Questions from the audience?
And if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will give you permission to speak. So let me just go through here some of the questions, and I saw some great questions here. A lot of chat. Again, if you want to use raise your hand, feel free to ask questions. Now let me go to here. I think we've answered most of these questions about regional. I mean, same as Africa, people are asking, can this be done in different countries or different continents? Absolutely, right? Not a whole lot of regulatory barriers to using this kind of technology, be it in Latin America or Africa or Asia or any other country. Let me just go through I don't see any raised hand. Oh, hold on here. I have Manuel. Manuel, you can unmute yourself and go ahead with your question, please.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for giving me opportunity. That was a nice presentation. All I want to ask is, in West Africa, especially in my country, Ghana, we've not accepted a blockchain, even though people do trading, but it's not officially because they are in expectance that it's not centralized. So to this effect, and in Ghana too, our main background is agriculture, where we are now focusing on using now the new blockchain into like a technology for them to also use in their trade and stuff. So how are you going to convince a farmer in such an aspect of this kind of technology you guys want to implement? Thank you.
Perhaps we can take this question first. Who wants to go first? Vito, Gaetano, or Soraya?
I can go.
Please, Soraya.
Go ahead, Soraya. Go ahead.
So, you know, Emmanuel, for us, I can speak of where we're working, and most farmers are very receptive because they want to see a change. And if they see that the tool brings value to what they're doing, they understand immediately. And maybe, you know, not everybody will understand, but there's enough of people who will understand. And these are the farmers that we primarily work with, because if someone is super convinced and see that there is a change and that the tool is working for them, then they will start implementing it and testing and seeing that there's a shift, and then people talk. If something works, we know well that everyone will just want to adopt it, and that's how it's been evolving in Tunisia, or in the farms that we are speaking with in the Philippines and in Kenya. So, you know, making a tool that adds value, because that's the primarily need.
So farmers are very pragmatic. If you have added value tools for them, they will listen to you and give you their time. Vito, you wanted to perhaps add something?
Yes, only to confirm that I have an experience similar to Soraya explained, because we have found the initial doubt about the usability, the doubt about the investment, but when it is explained that the added value in terms of reduce the investment in recording the data, the feasibility to become evident, because along the supply chain, it is not so easy to become evident and to declare in a transparency way the value that each farmer can provide in all the supply chain.
Thank you. I see another hand raised. Aditya, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question, which will be a final question to our panelists, so we can move on to the next presentation in this webinar. Aditya, go ahead.
Hello, is I audible?
We hear you, yeah.
Hello, everyone. So myself Aditya, and thank you for giving me opportunity to interact with the speakers, lovely speakers. So my question is little similar to the last questions that someone had asked from the people who are joining this program. Is that the implementation of the technology, like what we have startups we are working mainly for the small and marginal farmers. Hello.
So Aditya, I think we can't hear you so well. If you can perhaps write your question on the chat, and I'll kindly ask my colleague Eric to read it, simply because I think the sound is not good. At least we don't hear you so well here in Marrakesh.
Okay.
So perhaps type it
it's
on
now
the chat.
audible. It's now audible.
Not so great. Given we have just a few minutes left, perhaps
Okay, I'm writing on my chat.
Thank you. Yes, and Eric, if you can help with reading, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, will do. And folks, if we don't get to all your answers, we will be catching up and sending out a few after the event as well. What's next on your agenda as we wait for Aditya's question on the chat?
We have a video that was shared by one guest who couldn't be present today with us. So we'll move on to this video, and then the last presentation by Neo Rurale, and closing words for this webinar. This webinar that is also the launch event for Blockchain for Supply Chain Association North Africa, as well as with our folks from Europe. So we'll share Eric will share the link to the website and explain a little bit how we're going to go moving forward for those that want to become members, to participate in the activities, to also take classes and so on. So that's the agenda for the rest of our webinar, the next 30 minutes. If we have the question, let's take it now, and then we'll move on to the video. If not, we'll move on to the video immediately.
I do not see the question yet from Aditya. Suggest you move on to the video.
Fantastic. Okay. So we'll be able to, okay. I'll share the presentation once again. which has the link to the video that was sent. There we go. Or perhaps if it's easier, let me actually do something like this. There we go. I think we'll see much better. There we go.
Everyone, my name is Chris, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of TheoryMesh. TheoryMesh is a company focused on agriculture and food supply chain traceability. We use blockchain to make sure.
And I suggest you share your screen for the audience.
I'm going to talk about some of the best practices.
Oh, apologies. I thought the screen was shared actually. So then once again.
There you go. Awesome.
We're managing sustainability using blockchain for agriculture and specifically with the impact on farmers. When we think about sustainability, I always go back to the UN sustainability goals. What I'm sure are familiar with is these goals touch on a number of different areas, including environment, management, food production, and creating better quality across the different systems. I'll touch on a few of these today. I'm not going to go in extensive depth into everything, but you can see how using blockchain in agriculture can really help us to drive a lot of better outcomes for farms, farmers, and the communities they live in. When we start taking a look at the farm and ask the questions around how do farms participate in sustainability, a few things pop to the surface right away. Beyond food production and that as the core capability of farms, some things that we see are that farms can actually help capture carbon and sequester carbon as we think about the environment and trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Farms today actually act as a source of an enormous amount of data about what's happening in the world, what's happening in the economy, and specifically, the data about food production, so understanding where food's being produced and how it's being produced. And all that data feeds into the supply chain. So if we look at any major food company who's trying to make sustainability claims, those things all start with the farm, what happens on the farm level. So we need to find ways to tie together those different pieces of what a farm does for sustainability and make sure we can reward the farmers for their practices and also help them monetize any data that they may have. What we've seen over the last few years is really an explosion in the data for the food supply chain. So we've seen at farm level, static information like seed data, history data, more dynamic information coming from satellite imagery or smart tractors, all coming together to create a picture of what's happening on the farm. That all gets integrated with the information that's available at the food processor side. So for food processors, a lot of them use automated systems. We're seeing more IoT come into the environment to update and track information there. And ultimately, we know that consumers want to see more data about the food that they're eating. They want to know if it's organic, if it's sustainable, and they want to see some traceability. Once we start to build those data chains from the farm to consumer, we can start looking at things like traceability across the entire system. And we can also look at other areas that are important like food safety, optimization, and improvement. What we're seeing today is that this is very difficult to do, primarily because the data systems and supply chain is not connected. So we very much operate as a number of different silos when we look at food production. One of the big questions is always who has the data. So for many farmers today, much of the data still exists in paper and spreadsheet. And this isn't a problem for traditional practices, but as we want to be able to start capturing that information, connecting to the supply chain, and in particular drive sustainability, it becomes challenging to do that if we don't have that data integrated. So we do see these as a lot of different information silos. And that even applies with some of the newer technology. So if we look at precision agriculture systems or farm management systems, often those systems as well, even though they're newer, maybe more modern technology, they still very much operate as data silos. So we'll see good detail on the farm, but that information doesn't flow through the rest of the supply chain. It also doesn't allow for the farmer to look at alternate ways to monetize some of that information. So these are all areas where we need to think about a little bit more of a different approach and start to look at how we can connect across these different types of systems. One of the first challenges for farmers is really digitizing and integrating data. So as I mentioned, a lot of the data today lives in paper or spreadsheet form. So if we think just about land history, what's happened on the field, to really get an accurate picture, we need to go across what might exist as that paper record or spreadsheet record. We need to integrate satellite imagery so that we can see what actually has happened physically on that farm. And then we may need to integrate some of the machine data that's available to get a full record. So as we start to think about what this means for farmers, being able to digitize and store that information is critically important. And then being able to integrate it across the systems that they're using, again, is an important piece of this picture. This type of information then has multiple uses. So if you think about land information, it can be used for everything from validating history of a product for a certification. It can be used to validate practice for sustainability, particularly specific types of practices that help to retain carbon in the soil. It can be used for things like land ownership or land evaluation, where we actually understand what types of crops were grown on that land. So being able to have that information available creates new opportunities to potentially monetize it for farmers. When we think of blockchain in the agriculture space, this is a typical kind of scenario that comes up. So we have a crop that gets harvested. We can have a smart contract created with details around that crop. So that might contain the type of crop, the variety, details on when it's harvested and where it came from. That can then be connected up through transportation information, which may be updated in that smart contract. The grain is potentially stored somewhere, again, transported, and then goes through processing. And what you can see in this example is this is sort of creating the example of using a smart contract as a way to capture the different data from the farm through the transportation process. But really, this process starts with having the data available at the farm level. So in order to really make this an effective type of blockchain implementation, we need to be able to see that information right from the beginning. And in this case, if that crop was grown in a way that's carbon neutral, carbon negative, has other good characteristics to it, that might be important as we sort of see this flow going through. One of the things that I've kind of illustrated in this example is CO2 emissions that may be measured as we go through this process. So if we start with a set of data that tells us that crop is grown sustainably, we've got some carbon sequestration that's been done early in that process to be able to help and create a better carbon profile off the crop, that might have knock-on effects all the way through the implementation. So we may see that carbon footprint of the crop being low actually allows for carbon credits to flow through the different participants in the rest of the value chain. So we may see that carbon practice offsetting some of the carbon tax that might be in play as we look at transportation or effects. And as we sort of think about this going through and reaching the consumer, in a lot of cases, consumers are being more conscious of both the greenhouse gas footprint, but then also the types of practices that are used to prepare the food. So for one example, we see food allergies on the rise, so having that detail going all the way back to the farm can help us create the right kind of profile to be able to have certified allergy-free products. But we really do need that detail to be able to get it back to the farm in order to be able to share that. So what happens when we start thinking about how that data gets to the blockchain and then gets packaged up into various forms? In most cases, starting on the farm level, we've got to start with the tools that are available to farmers today. So thinking about the record keeping and the production data capture. In many cases today, as I mentioned, that data is still available on paper or in spreadsheet form. So we have to look at the way that we can bring that into a digital system so that can then be integrated. There are a lot of different tools to do this. So for what we do at Theory Mesh, we provide applications that allow for capturing that data either directly or digitizing paper documents or Excel spreadsheets. But there are a number of different tools available to be able to capture that, everything from farm management tools to specific apps that look at the way that they can track carbon. But the key thing going past that production data is being able to actually integrate that, validate it, certify it, to then be able to create different products on the end side of that. So if you think about the production of food, we have a similar sort of production model here when we talk about getting this information to blockchain. So that record keeping and production data capture that happens on the farm side captures the raw material that's then used to build up a record or smart contract that represents what that data is. As we go through the supply chain, we want to be able to integrate those different data sources. Now, in this process, there has to be somebody who actually goes through and validates and certifies information if we want to use that farm data in, for example, carbon credit. So that farm data is a great source of information to be able to talk about the practices and maybe the key things we're being done to reduce carbon emissions on the farm in order to get a farmer to have a benefit from that. So thinking about monetizing that, we need to work with the certifier to turn that data into effectively a carbon credit. The same thing happens from a product certification standpoint. So if a farmer is using organic practices and has all of the pieces in place to look at producing organic food, they can go through a certification process to be able to hit that product certification level, which then again allows them to sell the product potentially at a higher price. And then the other piece that we're seeing is going through that type of a blockchain environment allows for that kind of consumer interaction with label claims. And this is becoming a big focus area for major food companies, where they're trying to differentiate themselves by having things like sustainable food label claims on their packaging. So consumers can choose something that's a more sustainable product. So to get there, we need to be able to have that data captured from the farm level, have all those different data sources integrated to be able to go into that kind of validation and certification process. And then ultimately those can land in different types of smart contracts on blockchain, thinking about carbon credits, certification information, consumer interactions that actually end up on either a private or public blockchain to be able to then attach value to those. Some of the ways that we're seeing this happen in the short term, on the carbon credit side, we're seeing different activity in different countries to be able to actually start creating a carbon market built around blockchain-based information for farmers. So we are already seeing the potential application of blockchain there for farmers to capture their data and have it certified to generate those carbon credits. Another way that we see this coming through is as food companies are looking to reduce their own greenhouse gas emissions, which we see things like the EU with their supplier sustainability requirements. That traceability and transparency is needed for those companies to actually be able to give their own product certifications. And that's going to require the implementation of something like blockchain in order to be able to do that. So if you think about what this is going to enable for farmers, using blockchain as a way to capture the data and kind of put it into that kind of smart contract form creates an opportunity for different supply chain collaborations. So it does create the opportunity to monetize the data and the product in different ways. Those claims and credentials around sustainability, traceability, organics do have value. Those products are typically sold at higher prices. So there's certainly an opportunity for that type of information to be able to flow through. On the sustainability side, having that history of production and processing gives the transparency that's needed for a lot of sustainability claims to be able to take place. We're going to see an increased focus on this, and certainly companies are going to be paying more for products that have got full history of transparency, and blockchain is exactly the right technology to be able to do that. And starting from today, farmers can start integrating their data there. One of the most exciting things for what we're working on is really looking at new business scenarios and payment mechanisms. So ways to use smart contracts that are payable to have consumers be able to tip directly to farmers, looking at ways that NFTs can be made out of these data sets so we can actually create new business scenarios where there's a different monetization channel or options for those types of products. And then that starts to flow right across the supply chain. So we can see, a scenario where farmers are producing a particular crop, and then they have an NFT that actually represents the data for that crop at the same time, and we can see them monetizing both of those things together as they look at the supply chain. So we can see a lot of different ways that that's going to come together in the future once blockchain is widely adopted in agriculture and food supply chains. That's just a quick kind of run through of some of the things that we've seen from the blockchain and sustainability space. And for follow-up or any questions, feel free to reach out to me at cvideo@curiosity.com. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. I think you all had a gist of it. Obviously, this video will be shared in the same deck that will be sent to all participants as a follow-up for this webinar. And I can tell, of course, it's a lot of content and it's a lot of things, but it also shows the amazing activities that are in this space. So for our last session, I'm going to invite our friends from Neururale to make their presentation. Let me know if you'd like me to share the screen or if you can share your screen. Hi, Vincenzo.
Hi, it's actually Matteo, but it's the same.
Sorry, your name is not displaying correctly. Yeah.
Never mind. Well, first of all, thank you for this fantastic opportunity to speak about Neururale. It's a relatively small company just south of Milan, in 1,400 hectares, which have been completely regenerated over 20 years. This picture actually shows where we are. The philosophy is quite simple. We decided not to use the plow any longer, but the harrow. We decided to use everything that could actually give us nutrients to use it into agriculture. And we basically managed to increase biodiversity, soil fertility by amazing numbers. Okay, sorry, here we are. So the challenge in front of us is amazing, and we have to increase productivity of agriculture by 60% in the coming years. But a third of the current soil is extremely or mildly to highly degraded because we're using that intensively. So the concept of regeneration is pretty high in our agenda. So what we basically done is basically we have developed a lot of technologies that actually do use energy, mainly agrivoltaic. We also use a bit of we use biogas from biodigesters. We improve a lot of the water management. So we have really created a small piece of paradise, literally 18 kilometers south of the center of Milan. But to come to the point, we also developed our own blockchain technology, which is we've given for granted that we had to show the food safety, some from field to the consumer. That we gave it for granted. We use a standard Hyperledger based technology, and we have that quite consolidated, let's say. What we've added is the environmental impact of every step of the production chain. So starting from the field, then to the mill, then to in this case, the pasta factory, transportation, and eventually the consumer or the stores. And we basically measured water consumption, CO2 impact, and a lot of other biodiversity. We use the QBS AR, for instance, in terms of arthropods, microarthropods, biodiversity of the soil. So the idea was fundamentally to offer something practical. So we developed this front end, which has a lot of inputs, which are partly automated. Mind you, we have both IoT in the field, in our fields. So we have a lot of water level measurements, CO2 measurements, plenty of sensors scattered around the 1,400 hectares. But also we use API queries to databases in order to get the relative information which is available on a number of different websites and official data from the government or the region. So we basically have this kind of front end, which ultimately goes all the way to the consumer. We talked about QR code, which is obviously fine. It's a common standard practice. But what's important is in that kilogram of sorghum, in this specific case, you know exactly how many CO2 emissions were actually used or consumed to bring your kilogram of sorghum to the shelf. How much water was actually produced, actually wasted, allow me to use, and what was the overall biodiversity impact when it comes to QBS AR. Actually, sorry, back up this one. We really measure not from the harvest, but from the sowing date. So we really measure from the moment we actually prepare the fields for the seeds, all the way to the harvest. We look at the biodiversity at the farm. As I said, it's almost completely automated. We have all the IoT directly writing into the blockchain. Then we measure the mill, the impact of the mill, again in terms of processing date, CO2 emissions and water consumed, location, of course, then to the pasta factory, and ultimately to the shelves. So we think it's a complementary approach to the primary one, which is again ensure that we have 100% certainty that that specific piece of pasta comes from that specific area or crop. But we wanted to add also, because we really live in biodiversity, we believe in sustainability under this lens in terms of CO2, in terms of water, in terms of biodiversity. So as I said, we are developing continuously the platform, and we're launching our 2.0, not really modestly, but it's a 2.0 effectively platform where we're going to aim to get rid of the environmental impact of the full supply chain and actually calculate the exact carbon water footprint on whatever we do here in Nerurale. So in a nutshell, it's fundamentally a direct example of what we've been discussing so far. We tried to put into practice many of the topics which have been mentioned and discussed today, and we're more than open to discuss and share, whoever is interested, how we did it and how we would like to repeat it again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation of Nerurale Hub 2.0. I see there is a question from Michael on the chat. Perhaps we can have you unmuted and you can ask your question directly, which will be our last question to our guests. We're reaching the end of this webinar, and we most certainly want to take time to walk you through the links of the Blockchain for Supply Chain Association. So please, Michael, go ahead, unmute yourself. I believe Eric would have given you the right now to unmute yourself. I can only see part of the chats, so I count on Eric to do that, to ask your question.
So can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
So I really want to thank you, Han, for such a great Hannah, for such a great presentation and organizing this event. So in Sub-Saharan Africa, and some of the work that I've been working with is that I find that there is a lot of ignorance in terms of the understanding of some of these new technologies. And so I wanted to know, and I find this both in the small scale holder farmers and also partly, but not in also in the large commercial farmers. So I wanted to know, how are you handling that? How are you handling, first of all, the eradication of the ignorance before you actually bring the farmer to make the buying decision for this technology? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, well, in principle, it is a it's a growing request from the end, from consumers. So there's a growing interest and attention on whoever is consuming our pasta or rice to actually know how was it produced. And in reality, we believe that is not only the certainty how that the process was properly made, and we can actually trace it back to the original field, but also they're interested in see, well, is it really sustainable? I mean, did you everybody is producing bio this or bio that, or green food or green pasta. I mean, but beyond labels, we wanted to give, all right, fine, you're having our rice. We believe is a fantastic rice, by the way. And in producing this kilogram of rice, we've consumed that amount of water, that amount, and emitted that amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. Because then we can actually say, well, and to compensate that, we are basically capturing or sequestering the relevant amount in order to become a net zero sort of player. So to answer your question, there's a lot of pull from the end customer. So the farmers and whoever is actually onto the production chain has to comply, whether they like it or not, to this request from the end customer. And this has practical consequences, such as, for instance, price. Very simply, you can actually exact a much higher price if you can prove that you're actually compliant to a number of these issues. So that's how I would phrase my answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for this answer. Thank you to the audience who participated super strongly with super relevant questions. We're reaching the end of the webinar, and of course, we won't let you just leave like this. I mean, for us today, it's been kind of the start of the conversation on blockchain for supply chain in general. We started with this topic of agriculture because it is key to our economies here in North Africa. And of course, I've seen some folks from Sub-Saharan Africa. We're very happy to have you here, all the more because there's no chapter yet in Sub-Saharan Africa, so plenty of room for creating this opportunity. And I will ask my colleague Eric, the founder of Blockchain for Supply Chain Association, to close with me this session by sharing the link in the website and just sharing with all of you who have attended today the ways in which you can get involved. Eric, if you want to share your screen or have me share my screen, up to you.
Absolutely. So I'm typing our website in the chat box here for folks to go and copy. We will also be following up the event with the recording link. So it will be available on YouTube. I know that we'll be sharing decks. We'll be sharing contact information from our panelists. Thank you very much for your awesome discussions today. Our guests all over the world, again, thank you very much. And yes, we will be sharing a bit of information via email to all the participants or follow up. And I did record a few questions that I think we might need to answer after the fact, and we'll try to get to those too. So again, thank you very much for everyone. Anna, great session. Thank you very much. I turn it over back to you.
Thank you so much. Well, my last words are actually an invitation for you guys to look at the website of the Blockchain for Supply Chain Association. You can discover the chapters that exist already. Of course, I encourage you to look at the North African chapters. And for those of you startuppers, students, professionals, corporates that are based in North Africa, by North Africa, I mean not only Morocco, of course, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and Sudan. I know many folks joined us from Sudan actually today. I encourage you to look at this link and also consider joining as members. As members, you'll have an opportunity to participate in many more events like this. Of course, we'll keep a certain number of events open to everyone, but also you'll have an opportunity to collaborate with other professionals in this field. You'll have access to courses with specific discounts and many more. So once again, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your questions and enthused participation. We'll follow up with, again, the deck, the link of the recording. And also I can announce already that the next theme for the blockchain for supply chain North African chapter is also a topic of interest. It is about water. So more soon on date and time. We also promise to organize events in person in all of the countries of the region. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here. Oh, actually, for those of you that are still here, since he's there, I see the founder of the Emerging Business Factory who hosted us for this in-person, for those that are in person, just to say words en français, en arabe, comme tu veux.
Just to say you're wonderful, keep doing what you're doing right here, right now, and believe me, you have a place to be in Marrakesh, in the region of Marrakesh. Hopefully we're gonna do it with Hannah. She's an ambassador for all Moroccan regions, but we would love her to be more and more involved in Marrakesh. She's doing a great job, and blockchain is the solution for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawfiq. Again, for those of you that have a chance to visit Marrakesh, I know Marrakesh is a big destination for people interested in North Africa and Africa in general. When you come here at the Emerging Business Factory in Sidi Ghanem, the industrial quarter, you'll be very surprised, and I can promise it is just amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Soraya. Enjoy your trip, and we hope to hear from it soon.
Yes.